Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Europe, your weekly TV show on the subject of the European Union. Today we have the opportunity to welcome Olivia, a student in the Master of European Law from the Catholic University in Lille. She will be discussing the protection of the European values and especially the future of these values.
Good afternoon, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here with you today to discuss on this subject.
So could you tell me more, please, about this subject to begin with?
Yes, of course. So to understand clearly this subject, the European Union is founded on a common set of values, including fundamental rights, democracy, and in particular, the rule of law. It's Article 2 of the TEU that enumerates these values of the European Union, which all member states must comply with. So I like to quote the President von der Leyen in this matter, and she said in 2020 that the rule of law helps to protect citizens from the rule of the strongest. On a daily basis, it is the guarantor of our most basic rights and freedoms. So her statement illustrates the importance of these values which the EU must comply with and mostly must protect. Defending these fundamental rights is a shared responsibility within the EU member states. However, the problem regarding the guarantee of these rights is that they're not protected sufficiently, nor they are interpreted in the same in different ways. So these values are not clearly defined in the treaties, and member states are creating their own policies as well as their own judicial system, despite the EU values.
So do you have a specific value in mind on this matter?
Yes, precisely. Well, for instance, the term democracy. So as Farid Zakaria predicted, democracies would evolve in different ways. So it's actually amazing because he predicted how democracies would evolve in only 1997. So it was a long time ago. But he said that for almost a century in the West, democracy has meant what he has called liberal democracy, defined as a political system marked not only by free and fair elections, but also by the rule of law. What he has called the term constitutional democracy. And today he has separated these two terms of democracy, and he says clearly, democracy is flourishing, constitutional liberalism is not.
So this is a strong statement. To what extent it is linked to the EU institutions?
Well, through the years, democracy has been repeatedly challenged by the different members of the European Union. The European democracy system is subject to threats from within the governments, and the European Union has arguably failed to control the rejection of these democratic values. And I'd like to talk about two examples which I have in mind, and so it concerns Hungary and Poland. So for a long time, the Polish government has been reshaping its own country, and especially its judicial system, in a process described by the European Union, and it's really important, a threat to the rule of law. And concerning, so the same uncontrolled situation happened in Hungary. And since the adoption of a new constitution in 2011, the Prime Minister Viktor Orban has been exercising what has also been qualified as a liberal democracy. So these two terms are really important. So despite numerous reports and resolutions of the Council of Europe, several infringement proceedings, and decision of the Court of Justice of the European Union, as well as the unprecedented activation of Article 7 of the TEU, the transformation of the judiciary into relays of political power has continued and accelerated.
So are you saying that EU is doing nothing effective to solve this evolution? Are you questioning the legal tools of the European Union to protect those values?
Exactly. Well, exactly. It's what I wrote in my report on this subject. I was saying that, I actually question the protection of these values, which in my opinion, and it may be harsh, but in my opinion, they aren't protected enough. In recent joint cases of February 2022, the court delivered two similar judgments against, again, Hungary and Poland. So so these two countries have they asked for the annulment of Regulation 2020 and 2092, establishing in short. So I'm really summarizing it because it's a bit complicated, but in short, they're asking the annulment of the mechanism making the payment of the European funds conditional and depending on the independence of the judiciary. So it's a sort of, many others interpreted it as a tool that could be used as a horizontal conditional mechanism designed to protect, in the whole, the rule of law. So with this regulation, it gives power to the Council of the European Union on proposition of the Commission of the European Union and to take appropriate protection measures. For example, they have the capacity to suspend the payments from the European Union budget or to suspend the whole budget program, which is a big use for a big tool for the Council of the European Union. And however, the problem is that Hungary and Poland, they consider this regulation as unlawful and as an abuse of power. Actually, this regulation shouldn't be linked to Article 2, since financial budget isn't a European value. As I said, it's democracy, the rule of law. And so that's why they consider it as an abuse of power. However, the court points out the importance of a common identity as for the European Union. But despite this affirmation, this argument of the court, Hungary and Poland, they still reject the notion of the rule of law. So despite this, they defend an extensive interpretation of the principle of subsidiarity, in which they include the definition by the member states of their own legal order, in opposition to the principle previously accepted by all, which we all know as European professionals, the primacy of the European law over the national law.
Okay, so would this mean you would recommend strengthening these tools or create more tools to protect EU values? As you recalled in your report, you state Müller, who affirms this loss of sovereignty is unequally justified by arbitral models of democracies and rule of laws. So aren't you afraid, in this sense, that member states see it as an attack to their sovereignty?
Well, for me, it's not the point of losing sovereignty. For me, in my opinion, the important argument is, and the main focus is, and it may be again harsh, but for me, the judgments of the European Union should be more qualitative and less quantitative, which wouldn't mean in the whole a loss of sovereignty. Let me explain. Well, I'm trying in my best words. Since the election of Viktor Orban in 2010, the European Union kept inventing new tools because they considered that they didn't have enough instruments adapted to these violations. In fact, they created Article 7 of the TU, Article 19 of the TU, and others that they use but not at their main purpose. So I have two main adjustments to propose. The first one is the idea of a systematic infringement action, because the problem with countries like Hungary or Poland is that they act in so many sectors. So the Commission isn't using infringement action nearly as much as they should do. And that's why they're considered, and well, it's very negative, but they're more passive than active institutions. And the second adjustment, the second problem to be adjusted, appears when the Commission brings an action against a member state. So they tend to make it very specific. They target it on a specific problem. And so it's focused on really limited violations. Even though the Commission wins all of these cases, they can be easily dealt with by the offending country. So therefore, the action could be brought not just against the action shouldn't be bring against one or two violations of the member states, but against the whole, against an array of violation seen together. Thus, the whole could be more efficient than separate actions. This is to say, and that's what I said at the beginning, the little quantitative violations would add up to a qualitative violation. In fact, to illustrate these adjustments, Hungary is a concrete example. The Commission brought an action against Hungary for firing the data protection officer. But by the time the Commission said the judgment, Hungary changed the data protection officer. And so the government responded to the Commission, so since we changed the officer, are we still supposed to fire him? Which in my sense is a bit provocative. And the Commission came back on its decision and actually changed those grounds and asked to not fire the officer. And this case was used by a lot of authors to say that even though the Commission won the case, they lost the war. And besides all of this, Hungarian government also created an agency for facial recognition, where they digitalize all the photo ID pictures of Hungarian citizens, which allows the government to know who participated at any demonstration. And this is a huge problem because they've taken the pictures of Hungarian citizens without asking for the consent. So they're monitoring everybody all the time with these instruments that have no legal regulation. And the important point to raise, well, in my opinion still, is that the Commission needs to see the combination of all of these infringements. If you take a step back, by looking at the complete structure, Hungary is in violation of not only Article 16 of the TFEU on data protection, but also Article 7, Article 8 of the Charter of the Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and also Article 4, Paragraph 3 of the TEU on sincere cooperation, but also on the violation of the whole of the rule of law. So this reasoning is, in my sense, it's not of losing sovereignty, but it should be on the main focus should be on structuring in a better way the use of all of these tools.
Wow, okay. So to conclude on this subject, would you like to leave us with a last statement for European auditors to think of?
Yes, well, great idea. It is, well, I think I made it clear through the different arguments that I just explained that despite the implementation of regulation and the existence of sanctions, the issue hasn't been answered. Still, recently, the European Union values are questioned, and the toolbox is still, in my opinion, it isn't sufficient enough, and it isn't well used. So the European Union has clearly appeared politically unprepared and poorly equipped to face institutional backlashes, whereas it is essential to act to preserve these values. Therefore, the question that I like all the auditors to ask themselves remains, in my sense, will Brussels continue to watch as member states sink deeper into it's a hard term to say, but will Brussels continue to see their member states sink into autocratization? So, well, I hope I've answered to all your question clearly, and that I gave enough elements to the auditors on the last question that I just asked. And just the last point, thank you very much for having me on your TV show.
Well, thank you, Olivia, for your interventions on this subject, which was very well illustrated. I would recommend auditors to read the research paper you wrote. Otherwise, let's meet again soon for the next subject on the future of Europe. Thank you.